Hello everybody, welcome to day one of Potential Plus UK's V Plus Festival 2021. This is supported by the Coronavirus Community Support Fund and distributed by National Lottery Community Fund. My name's Natalie Jensen, I'm an advisor at Potential Plus UK and I'm your host for this session. I'm delighted to welcome Andrea Anguera, and thank you, Andrea, for delivering this session on executive function skills in children with high learning potential. Andrea, it's over to you.
Hello. I'm going to dive into it because we don't have much time, and I would prefer that you have some time for questions later on. So the aims of the session are to introduce what executive function skills are, to understand what's the role in academic and life achievement, to understand the impact that has executive functions in children who have high learning potential. That's what I mean by HLP, high learning potential. And to take away an intervention framework that you can then try to use to support your child in any area where they might be suffering from low executive function skills. So executive functional skills is not a theme that is, or a definition that it's agreed necessarily, but there are a series of skills that help us coordinate all different brain processes for achieving goal-directed behavior. So once you have a goal, there are a lot of things that have to, complex goals that is, or real life goals, there's different things you have to put together. You have to plan, you have to think, well, and consider different things to be able to get there. And that's where executive functions generally are. Other people refer to them as control process or mental control processes that support emotional control, physical control, and cognitive control. They allow us to focus and maintain attention in those things that we are interested or we think that are valued, let us evaluate options, come up with plans for the future, monitor how well we are doing, because that would allow us to then, change course if needed, allow us to shift attention from one thing to another, to update our behavior if necessary, and inhibit short-term desires or short-term rewards that might not necessarily help us to long-term goals. They have to do with our the development of the brain, and it's a maturational process, so you can't really speed them up. There is a time where children are born, they have a lot of neurons, a lot more neurons that adults have, and as they encounter different experiences in the world, it helps them adapt to experiences, because those experiences will strengthen particular pathways, which are the things that they do the most or they find in their environment, and then we'll just eliminate anything that is not used, and then those pathways get myelination, which makes it it's a little bit of insulation, so to speak, so the processes of the thinking can go faster. So that helps us, activates the prefrontal cortex, but also with the rest of all the brain processes. So it's a whole brain activation. There are different domains we have, like physical, cognitive, visual, that all these things are working together when we talk about executive function skills. So it's very complex processes that go on. And that also integrates the emotional and motivational process. So it's not about just cognition, but also how you feel about something or how something makes you feel. They develop a lot during the first year of life. And that's where your child starts, talking, moving, etc., etc. Then there is another stage from 3 to 7, and we can see a big step. Children who are 7, 8, sometimes 9, you can see a big step from what they weren't able to do before, whether it's in behaving in class, having to control themselves, etc., organize themselves. Then during puberty, there is another rewiring of the brain. It's another opportunity, really, for people to, when they were little, they learn from the environment, and then puberty, they try to learn from the environment, but how to be adults. So that is another opportunity to change all the wiring, let's see, and adapt for the new conditions or what is going to happen next in life. And then, but that process doesn't stop there. It goes all the way to 30 years old. And even the why matter continues to increase until we are 60. So it really never stops. So that tells us a little bit why we need to understand when that child is delayed. It's not, that is something that is a process and we can really help, and it takes quite a long time. How they develop, well, they help us appreciate delayed gratification. So you really want to have that ice cream, but if you want to lose weight, that probably is not the best. Or if you want to really run a marathon, then you have to probably train a little bit. It might hurt, but that will in the long run build your skills, etc. It also helps understand time a little bit the same. That also helps with the gratification. That if I do something now, how will it affect the future? It also helps us try to think about hypotheses of what might happen in the real world. So cause and consequence. So from previous experience, if I do that, people will react in that way. Or if I do that, this is what's going to happen. So that's kind of all the things that help us do. So what I say, in other words, is just constantly what executive functions do is help monitor and update all the risks and benefits of trade-off of any activity we do. That not only is academic, but in real life, in sports, in your relationship with your parents, with your siblings, if you have them, with peers, with teachers. So it's everything that is constantly using that big network, because it's connecting everything. Is not one unitary concept. So we have different executive function skills, we'll see in a minute. So it's not something you have it or you don't. There will things, for example, like the graph shows. So this yellow skill is relatively advanced, is good. This one is even further advanced, but this green one is not much advanced. So you might have things that children are quite good at, or even adults, and others they aren't. There is no something that you have all or nothing. And what executive function skills different people might have actually a different number of them, or they might call them sometimes a bit different. But in general, they are response inhibition. So try to stop any response, like for example, if there's something you don't like, to stop yourself from hitting or lashing out. Emotional control, to see whether it's appropriate or not before we react emotionally to an event. Being flexible, so instead of doing everything in one way, we can actually change it, accommodate according to the context or the circumstances. Working memory would allow us to think or hold in our brain a lot of different ideas at the same time while we manipulate them. And that's, for example, if you're doing problem solving in math, you have to think of what the words say, you have to remember the numbers, you have to think ahead what you're solving, and that also kind of involves of working memory. But also in real life, when you have any social situation, when there is more, especially when there's more than one other person, so when a child is 2 or 3 peers at a time, there is a lot of working memory. They have to analyze the words that they're saying, the body language, the context of things they are saying, and they have to try to understand in real time what that means. Task initiations in children, or even adults in particular, can really struggle to start a task. It may be that once they start, yeah, okay, but the starting of a task can be tricky. Then sustaining the attention. So once they start, can they keep the attention for enough time so that task is finished? Shifting the attention. Some people really struggle once they are paying attention to something. Ideally, we would like them be able to stop, pay attention to something else if necessary, go back or shift again. And some people struggle with that. Once they're paying attention to something, they can't really move away from it. Planning, which involves prioritizing, so what goes first, what would be the steps needed to reach or make any plan or reach any goal. Organization, from book materials, school materials, books, PE kits, any personal stuff that you might have. Time management, you know, how long do you think something is going to take? Realize that it's been 30 minutes, and if I need to leave because I need to be somewhere at a particular time, that kind of thing, which again is done kind of in real time. Goal direct and persistence. So make sure that once you have a goal and you want to get there, that you keep working despite setbacks. And metacognition, which is about this monitoring, about this thinking about what you're doing, thinking whether you can shift, if you can do that. When I want to stop, can I stop? When I have to revise my steps or my approach, whether I can do that. And that kind of, all of those are different executive functional skills. And as I say, they don't all develop together. So you might have very good at ones and not on others, or the other way around. And that can be not only through childhood, but even adulthood. People have the strengths and weaknesses in different areas. This is a little bit of a table that explains, I think I put them hopefully for your handouts, but I kind of already explained them a bit to you, what they are, response inhibition and examples. So I thought that you can get down the handouts, so you can have a quick table to check those. I would like you to put in the questions and answers, just to think about one thing. Let me put the slide again so you can see it. Oh, let me go backwards. If you can think of one of the things that you think your child might struggle with, or one example of that, something they struggle with, and try to find, where do you think it is? Is this, you know, if a child, I don't know, they struggle putting their PE clothes in school, whether you will put these. Sometimes it could be actually more than one, but I would like you to have a think of about 2 minutes, and we can put it in the QIs, and just to try to think about what you think one of the things your child struggles with, and which executive function skill is, or which executive function skills are.
Can you see the chat box, Andrea? My children, if we're talking about,
I can see the Q&A, but not other. Oh well, actually, I can see the chat now.
It's okay. Yeah.
It's fine.
So somebody's put sustaining attention there is a problem.
And what activity do you think it is that's sustaining attention in particular? So what do they struggle with sustaining attention with? Does that make sense?
Learning. And somebody else has put that, and finishing homework is an issue for sustaining attention there. Somebody else has put maths problems when there are multiple stages, so a working memory issue. And if they don't find the topic very interesting, then again, sustaining attention there. Another one, somebody suggests that once a mind is set, there is a big struggle to change plans. So an issue with flexibility. Task initiation for handwriting. Another one, Andrea.
Another one, this planning ahead, paying attention to others when talking.
Can you see those?
Yeah.
Changing from task to task, again, another flexibility issue. Everyday tasks as well, brushing teeth, dressing, so time management. We have a problem here with cleaning rooms, tidying rooms, which is a real task initiation problem for us here, just can't get started. Talking loudly, lashes out, response inhibition. Emotional control and a fear of failure, that's another one.
Yes, someone had that emotional response where it's something with multiple parts. Their child thinks to fall apart. transitions from going outside to brushing teeth. I think actually you probably read that or not.
Yeah.
Instant emotional reactions, can't stop to use emotional control. Yeah, ideally we would like people to be able to stop that little bit before reacting, isn't it?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Someone else also says the child has Asperger's, which now it's normally diagnosed as autism, and unless interested in something has problem with all of them, which can be quite frustrating as a parent, I know, and a teacher as well, to be honest. So normally what the lacks of executive functions look like, some of the examples you gave us, that's what they look like. And for children who are particularly high ability, we know they have memory and academic skills are fine. They can be, you know, facts, they're great. They know, they may know about history or math or whatever, the space, whatever it is that they're interested, that's not a problem. And some can do very well academically, especially in primary. And then the applying what is known is not always straightforward. Like someone was saying, when they have many steps and they kind of fall apart. So doing that application and that thinking and that planning, the knowledge they have is just not enough, basically, to carry them. And that's also kind of a good way to know that it's not that the child is saying no, but it's an executive functional skills, but equally for adults. So if the knowledge is there, or the basic knowledge is there, and then the applying is the issue, then that tells us it's not a kind of knowledge or a lack of ability, but it's some issues with the executive function skills. And what are they important, as I kind of mentioned it to before, they help us really manage our lives, and they are good predictors of academic achievement, because otherwise, you know, that you need to organize yourself to do a piece of writing, you need to organize yourself to study for exams, and to do any assignments that a school or university gives you. They are also important for life success because they help us in any work you do. You need to, again, do planning, you need to relate to people, whether because you're the boss or you have another boss or peers that you have to work for, colleagues to work with. So all that involves executive functions, and all their social relationships also with family and friends. So really they are all encompassing of what we do in life. And why they're important in children with high ability, because we have many cases that we have children with very high IQ, and the IQ can be in the 99th percentile or even higher, but they struggle with executive function skills. Some of them at home, getting ready, doing homework, or just organizing themselves, while others are at school, or both, whether in school could be when doing pieces of writing, going out to being able to actually come back, from recess and sit and do work, or do homework later on. And having that high IQ is not enough, or doesn't translate to high achievement. And many parents who have children with high learning potential can sometimes feel a little bit lost of why, if I have a child with high ability, we are not seeing high achievement. And not always, but in some occasions, is that executive function skills are lacking. And who struggle with executive functions? All children and people who have any learning disability or any SEND or any neurodiversity, for example, attention hyperactivity disorder, autism spectrum disorder, bipolar, oppositional defiant, obsessive compulsive, all that kind of population will suffer from executive function skills, again, in different measure and in different things. The general population, we find that some people or some children are always seem to be behind, and that behind can be as much as 4 years, but they seem to, just after, they seem to catch up eventually. But it can be, as I say, as much as 4 years, their delay, which is not so much when you are 25 or acting like a 20-year-old, but when you are 7 or you're 11, sorry, and you're acting like a 7-year-old, that can look a lot for a teacher or a parent, because expectations can be a bit too much for that particular child. And other children seem to be being really well doing primary, and then when they hit puberty and all that reorganization of the brains come, sometimes then when they start to suffer from accepting function skills, and they're not so evident before. And also we find that, like, for the general population or people with average ability, accepting function skills can are very obvious very quickly, and you have had children with lots of delays in development. But for children who have high ability, because they know so much, they're quite good at masking some of those difficulties some of the time, and so they can do more or less quite well during primary if they have a quite nurturing environment. But as things, demands increase and they have to do more themselves, or the expectations that they do it on their own, then is when things can be obvious, and then we have accepting function skills. And we call them, for children who have normalized ability or accepting functional deficits and high ability, we call them DME, which is dual or multiple exceptional. In United States, they are called twice exceptional, or 2E. And then we have to, where there's a particular way we have to work and support them. And that's what kind of is important, that we know both the strengths they have and the weaknesses, so we work with both. So what can parents do? Normally there are different kinds of interventions. I'll give you a framework. It's not the only one, but it can give you a way to work, let's say, in an organized way through them. I always recommend that you don't try to do too much at once. You know, your child might struggle in different areas, but try to start with the one, especially the first time, so that then you can adapt it and see how it works and see how you can change it. And once that's achieved or have improved, then try to move to the next thing in your list that is more relevant or for your particular child. So first we need to consider what's the child developmental level. It doesn't matter that a child, as I said, if he's an 11-year-old and they should be doing A, B, and C, forget about that. Just think, what can my child do? And start from there. If they can do what a much younger child can do as a 6-year-old, it doesn't matter. You start exactly what the child is at that point. Then you try to harness, and we're going to go through this in a minute with more detail, harness the child's drive for mastery, which is, you know, normally 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds in general love to participate in the house and do everything that mom and dad are doing. They want to help with the washing up or cleaning, not necessarily doing it well, but you know, they want to participate. So we just need to maximize that. Actually, let me go through the whole list. Move from external cues to internal motivation. I'll explain that in a minute what it is. And modify your physical and social environment, the tasks that they have to do and the way you interact with your child. And I explained like the developmental level already. So you start where your child is. Then try to find what motivates your child. That's kind of the most important things, and it's going to be different for different children. Do I have the, there we go. For any task that they can do, self-care, it can be washing up, it can be, also depends of the age generally, but you know, washing themselves, getting change, any grooming activities, all that. Try to give them little by little the responsibility for those things. So because that helps build, you know, those skills. Anything that is chores as well are always quite a lot recommended, age appropriate, that is obviously, but also that's recommended because that builds a lot of executive function skills in the child. Then build acceptable choices. When there is no choice, don't give choice. But when you do, try to ask them, you know, from one thing or another. If you put your, you know, you want to put your pajamas before we read the story or after, you know, something that is something they like, but the pajamas is kind of, you know, inbuilt in that choices they're going to take. Try to include them in the problem solving if there's something they cannot do or you want them to get done. Try to, okay, we have an issue with you getting changed in the morning for school. What do you think is most difficult for you to do? What do you think it can help? Try not to give them ideas to them, but just ask them a little bit of questions to find how is it for them doing these things, and then put a plan together that they can feel they own it. If they own it, they are much more likely to follow it through. Visualize a positive outcome. In many cases, that can be very helpful. Your brain, if you visualize something, your brain believes it to be true. So that can help you get there if you visualize when you are able to tie your shoes or get your shoes done, put in before we go out. And use incentives when there is lack of intrinsic motivation. It is always better to use intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is something that comes from the child. Is because they want to be a big boy or a big girl, because they want to do it like my friend does, because they find it exciting, whatever reason they find, that normally is what we prefer to. But in some cases, some things that, like leaving, for example, the house to go to school, if there is nothing we can really find them to do, although in this case I will advise something like get an activity or a teacher at school that will do something with them that they like. So as soon as they get to school, something that they're looking for, whether it is reading or doing Lego or something, is going to happen. But try to find something that, you know, that speaks to the child, not to you, because something that is important to you, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be important for the child. But sometimes there's something that you have to offer an external motivation. And we don't want this to be big things or expensive things. Normally they're little tokens or things that add up until they get, you know, every time. Let me go back to what it was. It could be like, if every time you do this, if you do that in a week, then you get something. And it might be a present, it might be an extra time in the park, it might be an extra 5 minutes in the PlayStation, or something that is not enormous, it's just a little token, because we don't want to change their internal motivation to, okay, if I get stuff, I do it, because then all becomes about getting stuff, and that can also be an issue. But sometimes if we start with that external motivation and then we wean it down, then we can just, once the things are established, then that can help move things along. So moving to move the external cues to the internal motivation. First, you might have to, you know, if you have a child, for example, that they are not tidying up their room, just start with being quite specific, you know, explain, you know, tidy your room is a very general thing. You have to have a list, or in a way to come, how you're going to do that. And it might be you have a list and then you say, well, first put all your books in their place, for all the Lego in the box, all the dolls in the shelf. So it had to be kind of that detail. And then you might initially do that to them. You're the one giving them the instructions and doing this, that's cue, these signals, and praising every time they do something. But you want to get that little by little, you know, reducing it, so they don't just become dependent. You're just trying to show them the structure of doing things. And then little by little, you remove those things. You need to supervise them until things are established. And it can be, that's what I say, also start with one thing. If we're talking about tidying up the room, you might have to spend good 2 months, 3 months, I'm sorry to say sometimes, with making sure that these happen. You know, you can't just leave it and move away, expect them to do it. Not until it's been established, you can't move away. You might have to still do signals, and it might be that at the beginning you start with that detail. Okay, now you know the Lego, and now you know the dolls, and you go through the steps. But later on, you check your list. You might have to say, and then you can be like out of the door, but like, you know, it's been 5 minutes. You go back. How far are you? And, you know, like another 5 minutes. How far until they're done? And then you can move that 5 minutes to 10 minutes etc., until they finally can do it on their own. But it is a long process most of the time, because you're building these skills and the brain is changing while you're building these skills. It's not going to be immediate. As I say, reduce support gradually, and in few cases you can consider penalties. Again, we don't want to do that the majority of the time, all the time, but it's something like a child is being violent, for example, and then destroying the TV or smashing iPads, then there might be a penalty, which is not necessarily a punishment, but it might be a natural consequence. So, well, if you destroy the iPad, you won't have an iPad until you have won it back, or until you've been able to pay by doing chores, and these chores, you know, equate to this amount of money, and then you can have it, or something of that sort, that is not a punishment, but they can see, you know, how things happen or what the consequences of their action. That also might not necessarily there's other people involved. Wait, because I have another. Then we have to move and modify the physical or the social environment of the child. And by that, what I mean, oh, there we go, is when executive function skills do very well when the child is have moved around, have energy, doesn't have any energy built in. So if you don't have, you have a child with difficulty in focusing and concentrating, in having emotional explosions, one of the first things to do is allow a lot of movement, and that would be because you're going to walk from school to the car, walk around your neighborhood for a while, go ride on a bike if you can, horse riding, trampoline jumping, wall climbing. Try to build up lots of movement as possible, because that helps with the ability to focus, probably because all these skills also require executive function skills. So if you're riding a bike, you are coordinating your movement, you are looking where you are moving, and you have to move around to maybe avoid people or go to the right. So you are using executive function skills. The same if you are climbing, though, you have to get the integration of where is my foot, where is my hand, where is the next step I have to go, how much pressure do I have to apply. So in a way that all these things use those skills. So the more you can build in during the day, the better. And there is a whole of thing about sensory integration and sensory movement that you can look into, if you like, as well. That can be very helpful. Make sure you make the environment safe. If you have a child who is destroying TVs or destroying things or hitting people, then find a way that if they're having an emotional outburst, whether they are in a room where that is safe, or there's something you can do to protect them, or being outside in the garden, or give them an outlet that will be safe, like punching a cushion instead of a person, for example. So that is important. And you might want to also, they have problems, all the social bit, plan the interaction with peers. If they struggle with many children, then normally one-to-one can be better, because there is only one person to focus on, one person, one interest, one body language, one set of arguments, and that can help. Otherwise, other things that some people find that they can do is they can, instead of having free play, they have organized play. They might be, okay, we are going to build Lego together, and this is what we're going to do, or you give something that is specific, and that can also help the situation. Again, you don't want to do this all the time, but as you build the skills, then you remove or change or provide opportunities to try different things, but don't do them all at once. Also, another thing that is quite good when you play interaction with peers, if you know your child tends to struggle with 30 minutes, then do only play dates for 10 minutes, just to make sure your child is successful. If they struggle with 10 minutes, then do it 5 minutes in the park, so you can really leave it 5 minutes. So you want to make sure first the success, so that you can praise the things that are going well, or be specific about the things that are going well before you build up. And that can also be quite encouraging and motivating for the child. The tasks that you have to do also sometimes need to be modified and will have to be changed to simplify it. You might have to shorten the task or chunk it. So when I'm giving the example of organizing the room or tidy your room that is way too unspecific and vague. So if you chunk it and put all the steps that are necessary, they can help that. They can then probably do one at a time, follow a checklist, for example, which can be not words, but it can also be visual. That would also help to getting dressed in the morning, for example, something that you can, shirt first, underwear, trousers, and just follow a list instead of just getting dressed. That's way too much, too specific. Even brushing your teeth for some children can be too much. So you have to go to the toilet, put toothpaste in your toothbrush and brush your tooth. And that is like being on your left top side for a minute, then another one, or half a minute, sorry, and then for half a minute explain all the bits, actually chunking those bits as well. Building breaks, if they're struggling to focus for long enough, then make sure that you put breaks. So, okay, we're going to tidy the room, we're going to do 5. If you know they can do 6 minutes, then do 5 or 3. Always do less before they need it. Because what we don't want is to reinforce their, I can't do this, or they're losing it, and then just stop. You want to make sure that you stop before they lose it. And you be okay, we do 3 minutes, then we are going to go up and down the stairs, and then we go another 3 minutes. Or we're going to do 3 minutes, we're going to have some water or juice, and then we do another 3 minutes, and something like that. Alternate tasks as well. So you might do a little bit of tidying up, and then upstairs, and then you might brush the teeth, and then just keep tidying up, and then we might do something else. So it's not as much in one go. Close task means being quite specific, as is similar of the shorting or the chunking it. Don't make it too general. If they are, for example, cleaning, if you want them to help clean the table, just give them a cloth, for example, and the only thing they have to do is wipe with circular motion, for example, and that's it. There might be other things that you would do, or they will be able to do eventually, but make it quite simple, something that they can do, and then you build on it and add more things as they get better. And also make sure where your child can't do something or won't do something. If they can't physically do it because they don't have the coordination, they don't have the attention, then you offer more support. If there's something they really won't do it, then it's not about necessarily changing the task as much. It might be more about the motivation. What is it for them, and trying to explain. Maybe for children who are in secondary school, they might not see the point of the exams, but if they want to be a veterinary, for example, or they have any mechanics or whatever it is, you see, well, this is not about the exam, but it's about to allow you to be whatever you want to be when you are older. And that, can help them see how that's a stepping stone to something. And that way we can give with the motivation. That I think I already explained that. We also want to encourage the self-talk. There's a little bit about the metacognition. So if something is not going well, trying to ask, why is not going well? What is it tricky, or what field you find difficult? Just so they also stop and think themselves, when there's still something they cannot do, they stop and ask these questions to themselves in the future. And that's what we mean by self-talk. And if you're not doing that, what do you think we could do? How can that be different, so that helps, or it's easier for you to do, so they can start to problem solve as well. As I simplify the first step, sometimes if we make the very first step quick, easy, then they can do everything else. In the example of getting their clothes on, for example, it might be that you will put the shirt on them, and then they will do the rest themselves. Sometimes that third task, if you make it really easy, I'm very short, or if you say, maybe I can't write all that essay because it's too long, and I kind of think, well, write only for 3 minutes. And sometimes once they are writing for 3 minutes, they will, okay, they actually get inspired and continue. So just try to find a first step that is concrete and easily doable. And reward them the first step immediately. The reward normally is praise. And praise is not general. I don't try not to say things like good girl or good boy, but more of like, you spend the 3 minutes working on that essay, and you wrote non-stop. Even if they stop afterwards, but if they actually carry those 3 minutes, and if they did 2 minutes and they haven't done 2 minutes before, you actually work for a whole 2 minutes. That's really impressive, you know, like you can see progress. That was better than the day before. And that kind of things you want to make sure that they also see how they're progressing and that you support them. And then you increase that time and the steps to receive that verbal or any praise that you're giving them. You increase the what they need to do as long as you go. But that also means that the adults also need to change how the way they interact with the child. And that, you know, if you say, again, it's an 11-year-old, they should know that the towel should go on the hanger every time they have a shower, because I said that before. It doesn't matter if they're not doing it, then you need to offer the cues until that is established. Provide reminders where it's necessary. You left the bathroom, is everything that you needed to do done? So you leave them a little bit to think about it if necessary, but you might have to do that. Reinforce all the efforts, which is a little bit of the same as giving praise. Allowed all participating in the household tasks, which are like the chores. And anything, again, the washing of themselves, the getting the clothes, all that, allow them to do them as much as possible, because that builds those skills. So in the handouts that you have like all the steps to go through the how to create an intervention. But basically, the things that you are going to do is you're going to change the environment around the child. You're going to teach the skills directly of how to do it. That might be you need to model how to do that, like how you're going to go about organizing a piece of writing, for example. And then you want to motivate the child to use the skills, trying to find something that they'll gain out of it, or something they're interested, they can see how that's going to benefit them. And if you really can't, then try to find extrinsic motivation. So I put the handouts that you can download from the website, and that gives you like a whole step-by-step thing for you to do. So you're going to find in those handouts, you're going to find what their behavior is and try to be as specific as it is. My child is untidy is not helpful. We need to be something like, after they finish playing with the toys do not go back. So have to be something pinpoint where you're talking. Your goal is, again, be tidy is not a goal. A goal is all the Legos are back in place, or all the toys are back in place after they played. You create an intervention following all the things where we have said, and then you find in the handouts, and then you evaluate and see how it's working after some time, a couple of weeks, what's working, what's not working, and make any changes that are needed, and then keep going. And then you have to evaluate again, and you include your child on this, because they know that is the whole process. They will have to do that in their lives, apply something, see how that works, make changes, evaluate it, and keep going. And then you fade that supervision, that support, little by little. And I'll put some resources there that we really recommend, are quite good. Smart but Scattered. It's about children who have high ability, but also problems with organization. Bright Kids Who Can't Keep Up is also about, DME children. Late, Lost, and Unprepared is also quite good. So we recommend any of them to understand a bit more, and to keep you, expanding your understanding of this. So I just kind of introduce a little bit what accepting functional skills are, so you understand a little bit of what they are, how they play a role in your child's academic and life achievement, why children with high learning potential could still struggle with accepting function skills, and with the framework that you will get from the website. If not seen, then you can follow all the steps and start choosing one thing or two things to work with your child. And with that, I'll kind of want to open now to to questions you have, which I think I can see, and I'll try to answer those. Pardon?
I'll put them to you if you like. I've been having a look at the chat box as we go through.
Oh, good, that helps.
Yeah, so we have a question here. What happens if a child lacks intrinsic motivation, if they don't want to do the task and if they resist doing the task? There's a couple of similar questions.
It depends. Sometimes, you know, if you have, if the problem is generalized, you might have to really choose your battles. And some things really, is it you who wants them to do it, or is it something they really must do, like getting dressed in the morning to go to school? Well, the child needs to get dressed, or you get them dressed, but you know, they need to leave the house to go to school. But other things, whether they, you know, put the towel in the right place or put their dirty clothes in the laundry bag, you know, those things we can let go. So make sure that when you're choosing something that you're going to plan an intervention is something that is relevant and really important for your child life at home or at school or both. And then, as I say, it depends, you know, like it will be, I don't know who answered that, who asked that, but it will be good to kind of see a specific of your situation. But some things are, you know, it depends of if we don't go to school, some children, especially if they have autism, for example, or even ADHD, instead of being you who sends them to school or that teacher who wants to school, you can blame like a bigger authority, like the government needs you to be in school. If you're not on school, we get fined. And yes, it's a pain that the government asks that, but we need to make sure that you are go to school and attend school. And that sometimes can help that extrinsic motivation. Yeah, we have to do that because otherwise we get fined. And, you know, that's what we have to do because we live in a society, that kind of thing that you can explain a bit better with a child with high ability than an average might not. Sorry, you were going to say, Natalie?
Sorry, I was just updating you on that last question there. So it's about tidying the bedroom because mum does it better.
Yeah, also, that's another important thing. Lower your standards. You know, they won't do it as good as you do. They won't be as great as you do. But, you know, if you had a, I don't know what child your child is, but well, I wouldn't, you know, executive functions within a 3-year-old who doesn't tidy is definitely not executive functions. It's completely normal. But if you had a 3-year-old helping you tidy the room and doing the things, it wouldn't be great. But you will still encourage them. I would allow them, and you might be that when they're not looking at it, you might put things away or do more than they're doing, or you know. But if you know, without them seeing you, kind of thing, because otherwise they can see that you don't really appreciate what they're doing. But that kind of thing is also can be a compromise. Okay, you will put the things away, and you know, I might do the vacuuming, or I might do X and Y, or something like that to build a little by little. But yeah, lowering your standards at the beginning is important because they can see, okay, they can done it and they're happy. And as they get on, then you kind of very little by little raise the standards. Okay, now you've done really well about putting all your Legos away. Can we make sure that they go, I'm making this up, but all the blue ones are in the blue box and all the red ones are in the red box, as opposed to all them being in one box. You know, or something that then you add a little, once they've done really well, you first praise them for that, and then, oh, I wonder whether we can now put all the reds in this box and all the blue in this box, and that kind of thing. And things like labeling places as well, you know, if this is where the dolls go, this is where the cars go, and if you have labels so the child doesn't have to think that, that will also help. Labels, boxes, you know, so things that they can see easily where things leave and where things go.
Thank you, that's great. I have another question. What advice do you have for task initiation?
And that is the one that we'll try to, obviously, again, that depends on the task, but make that first step really easy by either shortening, being very specific, supporting it. You know, if it's a child who has to do homework, then don't ask to do all the homework in one go. Just ask them to do, you know, 5 minutes of homework, and that means really 5 minutes. So once the 5 minutes are off, they kind of stop. If they want to continue, that's okay. But if they don't want to, you just, okay, that's 5 minutes. And if they can't do 5 minutes, make it 2 minutes. Whatever it is, make that first step really easy, really straightforward, and really, really tiny, so it doesn't feel as big. And many times, once they've done that, then they can engage a bit more.
Thank you, Andrea, that's great. Another question here, what is a good educational environment for children who are DME and struggle with executive functioning?
It has to be quite nurturing, but I will say that is true for all children. You know, we need to make sure that we understand where they are, thinking that children should do this because they're very able, or should do that because they're that age. That kind of thinking from any adults is not helpful. If a child has a weakness, then you just work on their weakness at the level they are, and support that. And you can't really also, again, work on, you know, have expectations to, if there are more than one thing, to support all that at once. You need to find, you know, well, two, maximum 3 things, depending on the degree of difficulty they are, to work at a time. And once that things are done, then you support the other. But especially for children with high ability, but really for everyone, that goes along making sure that you allowed whatever they like and enjoy, and let them succeed about. You give them challenges in what they're doing. They can enjoy also the things, you know, not, I'll take, for children who like reading, you can't read if you don't do that, or you cannot do your math if you don't do your writing. That kind of things is not very helpful. So we want to make sure that they still have joy and can enjoy the things they want, and they do, or they're good at the same time while we're building these skills. And we can talk to our children, explain that, you know, well, you can't do that yet, but we are working so you can do it, you know, and this is how we're going to do it, and this is the plan. And when it gets better, you know, we'll move to the next thing.
Thank you, Andrea. I have a question here. In regard to movement, do you mean to do this as part of a daily routine rather than tagged onto a task?
Yes. Sorry, I meant as a daily routine. And normally, depending on how lively your child is, you want to do this a little bit throughout the day, not just the 1-2 hour walk. You might want to do a little bit of even going around the living room is necessary, or around the garden if you have one, and do a little bit of bouncing here and there, and just do a little bit of movement all around the day. And if you can do activities that incorporate the, as I say, horse riding, bike, or even lessons if they enjoy, from parkour to, you know, anything that is like that, that helps them build those skills. And they're quite good, inclusive, in not only just for the planning, but even for the being ability to focus and plan, helps a lot.
Thank you. Can you give an example of how you might help to support a child who struggles with flexible thinking?
It will be a bit different if they're actually autistic, but it be through a lot of modeling. So they have to see you being flexible, and that means you verbalizing things that you wouldn't normally. So, you know, you get a call, oh, Granny wants me to go to her house. Well, I will normally today, I will go to the shopping, but she really needs me. So I'll have to go there, and then I'll do the shopping tomorrow. Normally, you will not say these things aloud, or most people don't. But when you do that, your child can see that you are doing it, and they can learn and see other people doing it. And sometimes you can comment that to your partner if you have one, or a family member. Oh, the other day I wanted to do that because I do that every day, but then this happened, or the car broke down, so I have to do that instead. So they can see that you are being flexible about your approach. When a child actually has autism, you have to find a balance between their need for routine and when they, you know, what really change is inevitable. So you don't want to force a child with has autism to be flexible all the time, or have to be, because that is really stressful for them. That is, you know, it's a different, it's a need that goes beyond what we want. But when they have to be flexible, try to explain what, okay, we want to go to home right away, but I really need milk, well, probably not milk, but eggs to make you dinner tonight. So I have to stop here because later on I have to take your sister to her classes. I won't be able to. So at least if you explain and say exactly what's going to happen. So I'm going to go buy the eggs, and they were back home right away. They can understand that a bit better. So when you really have to be flexible, you know, and understand that I know this is really frustrating from you. I know you don't like the change, but I have to do it on this occasion, you know. So again, they know you are, you know, you're doing your best not to go in that situation, but they can see that you're trying and why it's needed. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you. Do you have any advice for helping with shifting tasks and transitioning tasks, even when the shift is something that they like and they're happy doing something else, but the shift itself causes lots of distress?
No, it's quite frustrating, isn't it? Especially when you know they like and they want to do it, but still they can't stop what they're doing to do something else or go to an activity they like. One good thing is normally if you have a visual timetable, and what a visual timetable, I mean somewhere where they can see, you know, what you do each day at particular hours, like when, and it could be color coded, for example, what the time they're in a school or doing a schoolwork nowadays, you know, while Corona is around, when they're gonna, you know, go to a lesson, again, not at the moment, but later on, and that could be a different color or can be written down so they can really know what time we're doing that and what things is happening, and that can help a lot because they know exactly it's all of them, so they're already being prepared for what's going to happen during the day and when the thing is going to happen, and also how much is going to last. That's quite important. If you say that something was going to last a particular time, try to stick to that time. As I say, if he's a child who has autism, it's no, you will solve, we'll be there between 30 or 40 minutes. And again, if you know your child is going to lose it at 45, keep it to 40, you know, try to do that. And then once they're used to the 40 minutes, then you can try building it up a little bit when necessary. But so if they know that it's going to come in, that is good. Also give warnings. So if they're playing or doing anything, you know, like in 10 minutes, we're going to stop to do that. And then you might go in 5 minutes, we're going to stop and do that. So they have that time to get used to it as opposed to we're doing that now. And if they're finishing something, like might be they're writing, you know, okay, finish that last sentence and then we go, or, you know, finish that part of the horse if you're drawing and then we go. So just kind of finish that bit, but obviously if it takes too long, then you have to start reducing that. But I hope that kind of helps a bit of how to make them move to it. Also remind them that sometimes that they are going to enjoy it, you know, like, you know, that happened, you know, last week you didn't like to do it or you feel very excited about it, but then when we come back you were very happy. Children who have problem with executive function skill, especially ADHD and autism, might really remember the negatives. So you really need to work at help them remember the positive, but you really like it once you were there. And so we're going now, kind of thing. And again, don't get angry. Just try to use your calm voice. And when you finish that sentence, then we go through the door to the activity and just keep it and remind them what you're doing.
Thank you. Andrea, we've got another 6 questions. Are you okay to answer them?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So what is the impact of high anxiety on executive functioning? Can they be realistically supported to improve their executive functioning if their anxiety is treated second?
No, I mean, if they are anxious, the anxiety, it needs to be treated or needs to be the core thing to deal with or work with. But then you can build, dependent of the level of anxiety, you might have a child who's not engaging with the life at all, that it will be a different thing. But if you have a child that feels anxious about social activities, for example, or social meetings, again, you want to make sure that you do activities where they're successful, that they're very short, that they are prepared. Okay, if we play, if we invite so-and-so, or we go to a neutral space, might be better if they invite someone, and then you're going to play this game or you're going to do this activity, and we're going to meet them for 10 minutes and then we go. So try to build something on that activity that causes anxiety, that is very short, that you prepare really well for it, and then they build on success of doing that activity. That makes sense. And that then you build on it. little by little.
Great. Any advice for a child who leaves going to the toilet to the very last second, or who stays in there for far too long and misses out on things as a result?
Yeah, that is a tricky one, because you do have that's about reading the cues of their own body, which is not much you can do on that, except that you might want to decide that, if you know that every 2 hours or 3 hours they might need, you might have to say, between activities also, that is a good time to go to the toilet, even if they don't necessarily want to, but maybe not while in the middle of activity, but when you are changing activities, then that could be a toilet break. In fact, a toilet break could be a break of the activity they're doing if they need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Then the next question is, for children who find it really difficult to stay on task and have a short attention span, how long roughly should or can downtime be in between their tasks or their different activities? Is there a time?
Depends of the child. If he or she can hold 5 minutes, then you have to do 4 minutes. If they can only do 2 minutes, then you have to do 1.5 minutes. So your child, start, as I say, from where your child is. So find where your child needs a break. The first few times you might actually, wait until the child can't do it anymore, so you can have an idea of how long they can be on task. And then you will give breaks before they lose it, or before they lose the task. So the concentration of the focus, because you want to make sure that they are successful in all these little bits you're doing with them. And then once they're very good at that 1.5 minutes, then you beat it to 1 minute and 1 minute and 40. And if they're very good at 1 minute and 40, you see whether you can do 2 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So you make very, very, very short, but it's the child who will indicate what they can do first. And when they are struggling to pay attention to something, again, depends on what you're doing, but allowing movement can also help with attention. So if your child can be in a wobbly chair, or it doesn't matter if they are spinning in the chair, if that makes them happy, if they are walking one place to another, if that helps with attention, that's fine. Attention doesn't mean being still. Attention means being engaged with what you're doing. So sometimes allowing movement and allowing activities on children might be actually building Lego or doing drawing while they're listening to something that can be a teacher or a lesson, or even to a parent talking. So sometimes make sure that you are not confusing whether the child needs some stimulus along what you're doing, or attention doesn't mean being still and looking at you. That's not necessarily being attentive, allow the movement if the child needs that to pay attention. I'm not sure if that difference, if I make sense there.
It does to me. I've got another question here, or a couple of questions about additional diagnoses. So if your child really struggles with executive functioning skills, might there be other diagnoses? And does a delay suggest the possibility of anything else? Or is the delay itself the problem in and of itself?
For people who just have a delay, I mean, the problem is you never really know, because there is no way to know when your child is going to, or an adult even is going to catch up, or a young person, or whether that continue. But if you don't see there is continuous progress from where they are, or that the difference with peers seems to be getting bigger, because as they get older, the expectations are more. And if you are already putting interventions in place and things are not really catching up or getting better, then that is normally an indicator that something else is going on. It's not just a little bit of a delay, or it's just not a little bit of not getting it. And then is when you need to think whether it's appropriate, if your child doesn't have a diagnosis, to think whether you might go to your GP or talk to the teachers, and it might be to look for whether your child might have ADHD or ASD, or actually anxiety impacts on all your executive functions. So to make sure, what else is going on, if anything.
Thank you. Just 2 left. What can I do with a child who's not motivated by what he can do well and doesn't recognise their achievements, just belittles them or picks out the negatives? It's
very tricky, especially if they are over 10. Children with high ability can be very hard on themselves, because they can appreciate what high levels of any kind of work are. So they can see how great a writer can write, or how great a painter can paint, a famous one, this is, and they compare to like the high standards as opposed to the standards of their own age. So sometimes it takes a little bit of actually confronting them, okay, for your age, this is what people expect. And sometimes, depending on what it is, you might look some examples online. This is what children your age can do, or are expected to do. And look, you're doing this, and if he's writing, you're writing longer, you're using more advanced vocabulary, you're using more advanced structure. You know, people who are writers or painters, etc., have done that for life, you know, and they had studied and they had practiced. You're only 11 or 16, and this is how much you can do with the time and the practice you have had. But if you want to get better, then we can find classes, we have had lessons, so we can, you know, put more time to get improved. But it's trying to make them understand that all things are processes, not something that just happen, and they do. And again, when you use the praise, make sure that it's not, oh, that is beautiful. No, just say, oh, the contrasting of these colors, it really kind of catches my eye. That kind of a feedback, instead of being like, oh, no, you're exaggerating, because it's a specific, actually makes them think about, oh, okay, that seems to be something that people appreciate. Or, you know, oh, the perspective here, really, I can see that is quite really far away. That you draw here. So making that very specific feedback on the things they do instead of being very general about it.
Thank you, Andrea. Last question then here is, my 9-year-old son won't write. He has a 16-year-old reading age. Is this likely to be an executive functioning problem?
Your 9-year-old won't write?
Yeah, won't write, yes.
Well, we will have to set up the writing, because from the writing we have different parts. So one is the motor coordination needed for handwriting, whether they have the fine motor coordination, whether they can form the letters, and that's one part. If you can't form the letters very fluently, you don't have enough resources to think about what you're going to write, or your sentences, or your spelling. So that kind of clogs. For many children with high ability, we tend to find that writing is quite commonly an issue. And there are a few things. One is that if you don't have the dexterity, you have to really think carefully of just how to write the letter, and then you don't have the brain resources or the working memory to think about all the things that have writing, which I said, like the spelling, what words exactly you want to use, the grammar you want to use, the sentence, the organization of the skill. The other bit that many children with high learning potential ability suffer with is that they tend to come up with lots of ideas. So you have a child who wants to tell you about what they did yesterday, and they might say, I went to the park, and then I write, I went to the park. But if they went, oh, I went to the park, which is the one that is next to the home, where it has a little horse to play and 3 slides, and those slides are like the one I went on the holiday last year with my parents, or the year before now, etc. They might come up with so many ideas, and organizing those ideas is a difficult skill even for adults. So having too many ideas can be a little bit difficult for writing. So that can also make them stop them, because they can have all of those, but organizing them takes a lot of brain space. And that, even if they have high learning potential, working with that many ideas can be difficult, because they might not have been that level of development just yet. So we have to help them bridge that by doing things like a mind map or outline, so they can think ideas, and then once they have the main ideas, then okay, write about 2 of those, or help them organize them. Other thing that we help them is then to, if they are verbally able to tell you the story, then allow them to do this verbally, the story or whatever they need to write, and you record it, and then you work on the handwriting of it. But at least they develop the skill of being creative, and then you build the other skills a little bit by little bit. Oh,
that was
yeah.
Andrea, thank you. That was excellent. There's loads of brilliant advice there and lots of fantastic questions. I mean, for me, it was a timely reminder as well about, you know, reflecting on parental expectations, really, and modifying maybe my requests a little bit, I think. I am going to think about that myself. So thank you very much.
The other thing we have about every 3 months or every 4 months, we have one that is about specific support for children who are DME, and that includes some of the emotional behavioral at home and some about academic writing, reading and math. So if some of you might find that particularly helpful. It's not part of the V+, but it's something that we do every term.
Thank you, Andrea.